I'm Sydney and welcome back to my Flock and Squawk, and this week we are going to be making fruitcake. So to start, I had to pick a fruitcake recipe, and I decided since this is my first time making a fruitcake, I would go with one that is super simple. It is a 3-ingredient fruitcake recipe that I found on Pinterest. I'll link a couple variations on the recipe below. But what we first needed to do is soak our fruit overnight. So I'm going to pop you back to yesterday when I started this. Hey guys, it's the night before and I got my fruit weighed for the fruitcake. So I only have 400 grams of fruit, so I did the math, which means that I should only need 106 grams of flour and then 240 milliliters of my liquid of choice. Since I only have all-purpose flour, 106 grams is just under a cup, so I'll need about a teaspoon of baking powder and a quarter of a teaspoon of salt, because the recipe calls for self-rising. But I have in a dish ready to add my liquid. I think this dish will be big enough. But I have some raisins, some croutons, which is an American blend of dried peaches, cranberries, grapes, apples, and blueberries. And then I have some dried cherries. So that's all I have in the bowl. This is 400 grams of it. The original general recipe that I was seeing was a kilogram of dried fruit, which is 1,000 grams, but I don't really want that much fruitcake. I've never tried it, so got my fruit. And then with my math, I need 140 milliliters of liquid. The recipe says pretty much any liquid. It's like coffee, either black or with cream, or milk, or chocolate milk. It doesn't really seem to matter in the recipe, and if you're using alcohol like I'm going to, it says to add just a splash in when you are doing this portion. So, I'm just going to use this original spiced rum that we have in the house. We aren't rum drinkers, or we don't really drink rum, so it's no big deal, but I am going. But now I need to decide what liquid I am using to pour over my fruit. So, I haven't really given it much thought, clearly, but I am thinking that I'll just use coffee, because we have coffee. So, this only shows 250. So I'll try for just under, which is about a cup. Okay. So I've got my coffee. I'm going to add a splash of the rum. I don't know how much, but it was a healthy splash. So I've got my coffee, I've got my fruit, and I'm just going to pour it over. So it doesn't really say if you should mix it up, but I'm going to adjust the camera and then we can give it a little stir. So here is the fruit that I just poured coffee and some of the rum into. And it says to leave this overnight, so we are going to just mix it up lightly. The raisins kind of are clumped, so. And then I will see you tomorrow, and we can continue where we left off. So now we're back to today, and I have my fruit that has soaked overnight in the coffee and rum. So we are going to start getting our other ingredient ready. So I only have all-purpose flour, which means that it is not going to be 3 simple ingredients for me. Because I've changed the size of the recipe, I've reduced it to a smaller batch size. I have 106 grams of flour that I need to add, which is just under a cup. So I'm going to measure that out, add my baking powder and salt, and then we are going to mix in the fruit and liquid mixture. So this is about what 106 grams of flour looks like. So we have our salt, baking powder, and flour together. Give that a little mix. And now I'm going to add in all of our dried fruit and the coffee rum mixture that they've soaked in. So one of the reasons why I picked this recipe, because it is super simple, so it's not a complete waste of a lot of ingredients, but because it only uses dried fruit as opposed to candied fruit, which we already had dried fruit, and candied fruit is not necessarily something that we'll eat otherwise, so it makes no sense to have some in the house. Also, by making my own fruitcake, I can avoid putting nuts in, whereas a lot of fruitcake requires some nuts. So here is what our batter looks like currently. And then I have a pre-greased loaf pan that I'm going to be baking this in. So I'm going to pour it in. Get the last clump. So here is what we have before baking. It made a decent size amount, it looks like. So this goes into a 320-degree oven for, I made a smaller batch, so I'm not entirely sure, but I'm going to start with 45 minutes. All the recipes that I have seen for the 3-ingredient fruitcake have a minimum of an hour bake time, so I'm going to check on it early because I have such a smaller size. So I'm going to put this in and then I'll check back in with you once it comes out of the oven.